If you have been following along the greensandmachines.com garden section, you will know that I've had several gardens from living in a few different locations over the past few years. For my current garden, I've got this custom-built hydroponic garden I hope to use to its full potential. Let's get some seeds started and discuss my strategy with it for 2019. greensandmachines.com. First, let's take a look at this strange-looking garden and why I'm using it. You might be asking yourself, why on earth did I build this system? Well, for starters, I'm living in a condo, and it doesn't have a real yard unlike some of the other places I've previously lived. To make this worse, this front yard is north-facing, so it doesn't get too much sun either. But in the time I've lived here, I figured out that vegetables somehow can get enough sunlight to grow. I've had a little container garden that has survived with very little maintenance. So with no practical space to expand outside, I had to get creative. As the French adapted nuclear power due to the lack of oil, I adapted hydroponics to grow plants without land. I do not have land, but I do have ideas. I first explored doing an indoor garden in my bathroom. Having a double vanity and only one occupant using this restroom, me, it made perfect sense to grow basil indoors. I built this thing from the ground up using some parts from an old seed starting shelf and got it growing. This garden was very successful for the period of time I was running it, and I was able to grow many different vegetables. For more information on how to build it if you're interested, there's a full-length guide on Greens and Machines you can view by following the link in the top right corner of your video player. So if you thought that garden was ambitious, wait until you see what you see next. On my Instagram feed, I follow several different Indonesian gardening pages, which, by the way, you should follow my Instagram at Greens and Machines. Okay, I guess you could call these Indonesian pages agricultural. All of them used hydroponics to grow their food. Now, I don't speak a word of Indonesian or Malay, but I could see that hydroponics was a part of everyday life there. Since there isn't much land in Indonesia, the people there have to make the most of their land for food production, which is where hydroponics and vertical gardening come into play. I really admired their systems and how simple they all looked, so I decided to build one for myself as an experiment. Now, I've got a buddy who works at an irrigation supply shop that's nearby, and he was able to supply me with all the parts I needed to build a hydroponic system similar to that of the Indonesians after I did a little reverse engineering to develop plans for one. Originally, after building it, I wasn't actually going to assemble it outside, but with a little encouragement from my roommate, it is now the centerpiece of my front yard. Personally, I think he wanted me to put it out front more than I did because it is a conversation starter. But I digress. The build is a bit in-depth, so I'll give you a quick summary of how it works and what it's capable of. Water is pumped up from a nutrient reservoir into 4 separate growth channels. A solution flows down through these channels lined with plants, and eventually the water makes it back to the reservoir. The plant roots make enough contact with the solution to absorb nutrients to grow. For those not familiar with hydroponic terms, this is called the nutrient film technique, or NFT for short. Not only does it save on water, but it's also easy to control the nutrient inputs to the plants. Plus, with the way I have it designed, it's really easy to take apart for cleaning and troubleshooting if something does go wrong. Now, this garden can grow up to 72 plants at once. The way I have it designed, it's really good for growing small leafy greens like basil, kale, bok choy, Swiss chard, and lettuce. These greens grow fast, can be harvested repeatedly using the cut and come again method, and are best utilized fresh. Of these, I've selected basil as the best candidate for mass production due to its ease of growing, ability to clone from cuttings, and its popularity. Let's start some seeds in my system. Disclaimer: for all the products I'm using in this section, I have included links in the description below. If you follow any of these links, Greens and Machines will receive a portion from any sale purchased using those links. Let's walk through the process of filling my system with plants. For modularity, this system was designed to accept plants in 2-inch net cups. Using this rock wool I bought, I cut it down into much smaller 1x1 cubes. These I'm placing into a styrofoam egg container. Now, some of these I've previously stabbed holes in them so I can put the seeds in, but I'm going back through with a pencil to make sure the holes are big enough. Next, I'm sowing my basil seeds into each of these cubes. I'm planting 2 different varieties of basil at this time, sweet basil and Genovese basil. Each hole is filled with 2 to 3 seeds to ensure germination. Now the seeds are watered. The rock wool will absorb water until it's saturated, which will cause the seeds to eventually germinate. I'm waiting for the seeds to do their thing, but that might not happen. Basil really likes hot temperatures, and with it being about 68 degrees in my house, only time will tell if they germinate. After the seeds do end up germinating, I'll rig up some indoor lights to encourage plant growth and develop the plants. I'll show this next stage in a future video. Once the roots begin to grow out of the cubes, I'll transplant them into the net pots and fill them with my inert growing media. Lots of people like to use expanded clay for their hydroponic media, but I opt for a cheaper method, river pebbles. These you can get about at any local hardware or landscaping store. Just make sure you rinse them off with water before you use them. The next steps once the basil plants are established is to start propagation. You may have noticed that I only sowed seeds for 18 plants at this time. When the basil grows big enough indoors, I will be rooting cuttings from each plant to fill the remainder of the system. Cuttings take about a week and a half to propagate, while seeding could take twice as long to even transplant into the system. For more information on how that works, follow the link in the top right to our guide on propagation of basil from cuttings. I'd rather get established now indoors so that when March comes around, the system can be filled with basil all at once for maximum yield. At the moment, though, this basil is going to sit indoors as the weather this time of year is not very friendly to the plants. So what does one man do with 72 basil plants and 8 square feet? Aside from all the basil I would have to dry, make pesto or pizza with, I was hoping to actually find people I could sell to. Basil is a hot commodity when fresh, and I'll have more than enough supply for the entire neighborhood or for a local restaurant. I'm dreaming pretty big here, but from running this thing at barely half capacity last year, I know I will have the supply. It'll be up to me to find the right clients to sell this basil to. Ideally, I hope this garden can grow between 1 to 5 pounds of basil a week. At a market price of $5 to $6 a pound in bulk, that's around $5 to $30 a week. Not bad for 8 square feet of gardening space. This system would pay for itself in no time at all. So that's what my plans are for this year's garden. If you're interested in seeing more about this, or if you'd like to get your hands on this basil once I get the garden growing, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more videos, as bigger things are on the way.